This isn't my story, but the story of my late grandfather. My grandmother recently told me the story about how my grandfather got his blue pickup truck from an idiot salesman. My grandfather, whose name will be Chuck, always dressed like he was low on money, ripped up shirts and jackets cause it's cheaper than buying new shit. But Chuck actually had quite a bit of money from some stocks he invested in. Anyways, onto the story. Chuck's car recently broke down and he needed a new one. My grandmother always liked a blue pickup from the local dealers, so he decided to buy it. Chuck loved to haggle for a good deal and this time was no different. The car $18,000 and the salesman, who we'll call Jack, doesn't even think Chuck has made that much in his life based on his appearance. So, while their negotiation, Chuck says, "Chuck, I'll give you $9,000 today. Jack, if you can get me $9,000 by sundown, the car's yours." And with that they shook on it, and Chuck went off to the bank, where he wrote up a check for $9,000 and an hour later he walked up to the dealer with a shit-eating grin on his face when he set down the check and asked, "Where's the keys?" Jack tried to argue that there was no contract, but when Chuck called Jack's boss, Bob, the conversation went as followed. "Bob, Jack, did you agree to the terms?" Jack, "I didn't think I'd actually get it." "Bob, did you agree or not?" Jack, "I did." "Bob, then give him the fucking car, then pack your things. You're fired." Chuck drove off with his truck and the dealer is there to this day. I'm gonna get my first car from there soon, although I don't think I'll get the same deal, sadly. Back when swipe and sign credit cards were a thing, I loved getting the cards with "ask for photo ID" written on the back in place of a signature. This would happen once a week. Of course, I'd ask for photo ID, and about 50% of the time the customer would refuse to show it, or be shocked when I asked, even after showing them their own credit card. When they refused, I made sure to make a call, while retaining the credit card. To anyone who doesn't know, a Code 10 call is a special call a cashier makes to MasterCard when they think a card is stolen. The bank asks you a series of questions to see if the card is authentic or not, and can deactivate the card if they decide. Malicious compliance: because you told me to ask for ID. You didn't have ID, so I had to assume the card was stolen. Now I've wasted your time, not mine, and your card has been suspended. And if you ask to talk to my manager, they'll say I was following procedure. My father had a job as a mainframe operator for a company that had contracts doing work for state governments, involving a lot of data processing. His job involved babysitting a group of servers and rebooting them when the monitoring software said they hung, occasional minor programming, and annually talking to the auditor, the state whose contract he worked on, sent in. The auditor loved him because he always ensured they had detailed records ready. Also, the contract specified that absolutely everyone on the contract had to be a US citizen, and the auditor always demanded names and social security numbers. He had about 5 years to go to retirement. In 2 years he would be eligible to retire, 5 until he maximumed out his benefits. They really desperately needed somebody to take the night shift, so he took it. He would be allowed to work from home full time, and he would be retiring soon anyway, and he would save a young married family person coworker from having to do it. Every fall he and I have a week's vacation together in Disney World, because he owns a timeshare there. One year, almost 3 years into the 5, he showed up looking kinda steamed, so after we checked in I asked him to spill the beans. It seems that his company had decided to sell off the division, and they were purchased by an outsourcing company in India just the week before. The new company told him he'd have to attend some mandatory meetings during our vacation. When he explained that he had vacation booked for that time and would therefore be unable to attend the meetings, they said, "No, you don't. Your vacation time was accrued with the old company and they approved the vacation time. You have no accrued vacation time with us. So if you want to take the time, it'll be unpaid, and we'll note in your hours record that you demanded time off without approval." He and I already had a few $1,000s sunk into the vacation, so he said okay and took it unpaid. When he got home, he immediately looked it up and figured out that if he retired in a few months, instead of waiting 2 more years, he would get about $50 a month less money. He decided that the money was worth it to him, so he started the process. The new employer instantly hired temps from India to work on the contract. My father pointed out to them that he was responsible for proving to the auditor that only US citizens in the US were working on the project, so the company flew them to the US. He pointed out to the employer that they still weren't US citizens. They shrugged, and he figured out that he would be retired before the auditor came around again, so they could deal with losing the contract after he left. He printed copies of his emails to them saying you can't do that or you'll lose the contract, and their emails to him saying they didn't care what he said and kept the prints to cover his behind. Meanwhile, the new company announced that he *HADTO* have a cell phone. The old employer had skipped that because everybody knew that cell phones don't work at his house. No coverage from any carrier, but the new company had a harden about it. He had to spend several hours doing paperwork about it, and then they sent him one. It didn't work, as expected. So they demanded he bring it into the office in person, which ate a couple days of his work time, because he had to get to a day schedule, then spend a day driving it in, then go back to a night schedule. When he drove it in, it looked at it, and of course they found nothing wrong, because there was cell coverage *ATVOFFICE*. So it took that one, and they sent him another one. Lather, rinse, repeat. Then he had to get back onto a day schedule for them to send a technician around to determine where at his house there was acceptable signal so they could install a booster. This took several days of his work time, and of course, the tech was amazed that there wasn't any place at his house with *ANY* signal at all. They finally sent him a third phone, and he put it in a Ziploc bag and put it aside. Dad had a Windows XP laptop for work, and the current version was Windows 7. He's not an "I refuse to upgrade" person. The problem was that the company refused to pay for upgrades to the monitoring software for the mainframes, and the version they had would only run on XP. The ad department for the new company really wanted everyone on 7 and off of XP. He and all his coworkers refused. However, since they all worked at the office, they'd come in one morning and find they had a shiny new computer which wouldn't run any of their software, so they were an entire staff of it professionals getting paid a salary to twiddle their thumbs. My dad wasn't there, so it couldn't get their hands on his laptop, and he became the only person who could tell what the servers were doing. It got increasingly nasty about it, until they finally cut him off the network entirely, and he had to get his boss to intervene. The time finally came for him to retire. It had been nagging him several times a day to make an appointment with them on retiring day to give them his laptop and the unused cell phone, and he had to have a goodbye meeting with his boss anyway, so he was going in instead of mailing things. When the day rolled around, he went in, and it met him first, and took the laptop to be wiped and disposed of. Then he met with his boss. They chatted for a while, and then it occurred to the boss that the laptop kinda mattered, because it was literally the only computer left in the company with which they could run the vital monitoring software. My dad said, "Oh, it took it from me an hour ago to wipe it." The boss actually screamed "No!" and ran out of the room. My dad waited a while and left. He never saw the boss again. This was a year or two ago. The house I was living in has a garage, but has been converted to a workshop, so I always had to park on the street. I got a letter from the council to say they were going to be doing road resurfacing for all the streets in the area, and all cars had to be off the road so that they could replace all the bitumen. The problem was that they didn't say what streets or in what order that they were doing them in. So me trying to be considerate, I moved my car off the road and parked in my old driveway between the road and the footpath. I made sure I was not blocking the footpath or on the grass nature strip. The very next day I noticed a parking ticket on my car. The reason printed on the fine was vague, mentioning obstruction of access, so I rang the council. The conversation went as follows. Me, hi, I received a parking fine that I don't think is valid. Can I get some more information about the road rule violation so that I can contest it and have it cancelled? Council person, your car was in the way. It should have been parked on the road. Me, I moved it off the street as per your request to clear the road, and I only parked it in my driveway so that it wasn't on the bitumen, as you hadn't given any indication on which roads were going to be resurfaced. Council person, then it should have been on a different road. Me, which one? I don't want to be in the way while you are resurfacing. Council, are you dumb? If we are working on your street, maybe you could park on Smith Street. So that's exactly what I did. Apparently that's also what the 3 other people did who also got tickets. Now Smith Street has 3 patches of old bitumen where their council workers had to carefully resurface around the cars that were parked exactly where we were told. If you enjoyed the stories, slap the like and subscribe button for more of them, and don't forget to support the original writers with an upvote. Links are in the description. Peace out, and catch you tomorrow.